Thank you, Rabbi Yosef Yafa, for recording this Shmirat HaLashon series. Hashem shall give you only beracha. We're up to part 29. Thank you, Hashem, b'siyata d'shmaya, and thank you for the emails just this past week of all the Yehudim, all the Jews that started learning the Sefer Chofetz Chaim Shmirat HaLashon. Thank you, Hashem. As of from last week, after we made the announcement that we're looking for donations to be able to spread more books of Chofetz Chaim to the companions, as of now, we have a stockpile of 200 books. So whoever, thank you for the sponsors until any time, you wanted to stay anonymous, so we're not going to mention you, but Hashem should give you only beracha, nachat from your children, health, parnasa, and only good news, b'ezrat Hashem. Whoever wants to donate more books, we need your help. The money goes straight for the donations of the book to spread out from different people that want to take upon themselves to finish the book at least once. Email me, Yaakov Rahimi @gmail.com. I only give it out to people that are ready to be mekabel, bli neder, to finish the Sefer at least once. And Baruch Hashem, there's now way over 1,000 more, a lot more than that by now, of people learning the Sefer. So if you want to join, email me, yaakovrahimi@gmail.com. And again, if there's any shuls that want to start having a shir, a class on the laws of the Chofetz Chaim inside your shul, Baruch Hashem, we have sponsors for that. So please email me, yaakovrahimi@gmail.com. Just start learning the Sefer, and b'ezrat Hashem, bring the Geulah. Today we're going to discuss a few things from the Chofetz Chaim and Sefer Shmirat HaLashon. Chofetz Chaim writes like this. We know the Pasuk in Mishnah writes, Mavet v'chayim b'yad HaLashon, that death or life is in the hands of the tongue. Says the Chofetz Chaim, what a person can damage with a tongue, you cannot damage with a sword. Ma she'echol la'azik b'chelbo, whatever you can damage with a sword, other people, Lo yuchala azik kehalashon, cannot damage as much as a tongue. Why? Ki adam omet kan, you can have a person standing right here, and his other friend is very far away from him, but you can still kill him with the power of the mouth, damage him, give him a bad name, give him a bad status, make fun of him, and damage his reputation. Damage his family's reputation, chas v'shalom. Say that he's not talented, and therefore he's not going to get hired in different places. Aval acherev, but a sword, eno mamita, a sword can only kill ela besamuch elav, whoever is right near him. And says the Chofetz Chaim, lekach nivru be'adam shne enayim, that's Hashem created 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, but 1 mouth, says the Chofetz Chaim, to give us a hint. Hashem wanted to give us a hint. Hashem wants us to get the point. You have 1 peh in order for a person to be mema'et b'dibur, to remind ourselves to calm down with how much we talk. And the Chofetz Chaim goes on. We know the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, Siyag lechokhma shtika, the boundary for chokhmah, the boundary to be a intelligent person, the boundary to be a good person, to do the right thing is shtika. A person should always try to be quiet. And like the Chachamim always say, a person who always jumps up in the conversation when it's not the right place to jump up and talk, you know most probably that guy, ulo chacham, he's not the smartest guy in the world. Haman did it. For those who remember the stories of Purim, Haman jumped up and he told Achashverosh a suggestion. And from there we knew that Haman, something was off with that guy. So over here says the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, Sayag de chokhmah shtika. And then the Chofetz Chaim goes on, Samen de kula, and what's the health? What's the number 1 medicine? Shtika, for a person to try to close their mouth and not talk as much. Va'zair belashon, be careful from your tongue. Ki ishun bata ayn, with a blink of an eye. Meaning a person can get casual and not watch his tongue. If a person is not reminding themselves to always be careful how they talk, and if you don't watch your mouth, then chas v'shalom, your mouth can damage a person, their lives themselves and others. Kebata ayn, which means with a blink of an eye. 1 blink of an eye, just like that, a mouth can damage someone. You can have in one hand a person who's quiet so he keeps it safe, but in another hand a person who's not careful with their mouth. In 1 second, 1 word that comes out, with a split of a second, a blink of an eye, says the Chofetz Chaim, how much damage can get done. And Rabotai, I'm sure we all know such cases and scenarios where a person by mistake said a word that he knows or she knows was not at the right place, and it was so fast that they said that word, it was so natural, and even though maybe they didn't mean it, but that word caused so much damage. It hurt other people's feelings. It damaged relationships. Says the Chofetz Chaim, kebebat ha'ayin, with a blink of an eye, a mouth can damage. So always be at guard. And he quotes the pasuk in Mishlei. Pi kasil, the mouth of a person who's not so intelligent, of a fool, michitalo, is always going to cause him to damage. It's always going to be like a stumbling block. He's going to trip over it. Usfatav, and his lips, mokesh nafsho, is always going to hurt his soul. It's always damaging, inflicting his soul, says Shlomo HaMelech. The mouth of a fool, michitalo, always makes him trip. He's always messing up. He's always causing damages, and he ruins himself. Usfatav, and the lips of a fool, says Shlomo HaMelech. Mokesh nafsho, is always hurting his soul, is always damaging. Mokesh means inflicting pain, physical pain. And then he goes on. Shomer pivul shono, a person who watches their mouth and their lips. Shomer mitzarot nafsho, will watch from having tzarot, pain, yisurim, nafsho, on their soul. Says the Chofetz Chaim, what does that mean if you watch your mouth, you're going to watch yourself and not having pain on yourself? It means two things, olam hazeh and olam haba, in this world and the next world. The mouth has so much power that in this world, if a person is not careful what they say, if a person doesn't watch how they talk, then they can bring pain upon themselves, which means they could cause fights. They could cause others not to like them, others to get uncomfortable, people not to have parnasa, breaking relationships. They're causing tzarot, they're causing trouble. And also tzarot nafsho, it causes trouble for the neshama. It causes trouble for a person's soul, because a person's neshama, every time they talk lashon hara, it damages their neshama, their own soul, more and more and more. And like the Gaon Mevina says, that the pri olam haba, most of olam haba is dependent on how a person was careful with using their mouth in this world. A person's nefesh, soul, is going to get so damaged in this world and the next world if they're not careful how they talk. And a lot of yisurim, a lack of panasa, or chas v'shalom, other things come when a person, says the Chofetz Chaim, is not careful how they talk. And he goes on the here like a Chofetz Chaim. V'im tishev b'chabura, if you're sitting with a group of friends, Tov shiyamu lecha, it is better that they tell you, Dabel, start talking, why are you antisocial? Ma ata shotek kol kach, why are you so quiet? It's better they tell you that comment. Mima shetiyem Dabel, than being that guy that always talks until all his friends tell him, Shah, you're talking too much already. Says the Chofetz Chaim, it's better to be the first guy, the first person that's usually quiet, that others have to comment on, why are you so quiet, please talk, than being the other guy that his mouth doesn't stop until they tell him, please stop talking. Why, says the Chofetz Chaim, why is that not good to always talk until they tell you to stop talking? Says the Chofetz Chaim, a person who tells himself, I'm allowed to talk as much as I want, but I'm going to be careful. Only from lashon hara, only from shekel, only from chanufa. If a person says, I don't need to guard my mouth only when I talk bad things, whether it means lies, cursing, or lashon hara, says the Chofetz Chaim, unfortunately, most likely that person will also talk lashon hara. Why? In order for a person to control their mouth, not to talk lashon hara, not to lie, not to be machnif, not to curse or use the mouth for wrong things, a person has to start being careful to talk less, a step before that. A person should work on maybe talking less. When you talk less, it's also going to lead the person not to talk lashon hara. But says the Chofetz Chaim, if a person thinks it's a free-for-all, if a person thinks the mouth is a free-for-all, as long as I don't talk lashon hara, and he tells himself, I can be careful not to talk lashon hara, says the Chofetz Chaim, that's not going to work. That's not practical. That's not the trick. You want to know how you help yourself not talk lashon hara and not use your mouth to lie or curse or nivilut to pay, use it for improper things or lashon hara. You know what's going to help you not talk lashon hara? When before that you're already working yourself to talk things that are not necessary. Don't talk about it. Talk less even when it comes to other things. And he says that's the pshan in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Kol yamai gadalti ben chachamim. Rabbi Shimon said, Perek Aleph Mishnah Tezayin in Pirkei Avos. Kol yamai gadalti ben chachamim. My whole life, I grew up next to Talmidei Chachamim. And you can imagine Rabbi Shimon who's saying he grew up next to Chachamim. He means Chachamim, Geonei Olam, Tzadikim u'kedu techiyat hametim, who can revive the dead from the Kedusha. And he says on that, Velo matzati laguf. I didn't find anything better laguf, for the body. Tov mishtika, better than shtika, than being quiet. What does Rabbi Shimon mean to say over here, says the Chofetz Chaim Shmirat Lashon? He grew up next to Chachamim. I'm assuming, says the Chofetz Chaim, because Rabbi Shimon grew up next to Tamidei Chachamim, he grew up next to Tanoim, to Kedusha and Tara, I'm assuming all they spoke about was Torah and mitzvot and divrei Torah. So why did Rabbi Shimon say, I grew up next to the Chachamim, next to the biggest rabbis ever, and I found from them nothing is better for the guf than trying to be quiet. Tov mishtika. If they only spoke about divrei Torah, why is Rabbi Shimon saying that what he saw for them was it's always good to be quiet? Says the Chofetz Chaim. Because even we see from here, it says the Helik Chofetz Chaim, it's something I can't say, but the Chofetz Chaim wrote, I'm quoting the Chofetz Chaim. Afal Piken, even though he grew up next to big Chachamim, every human being, he says, has to talk about something about their guf. Every human being has to talk about worldly things. For example, what type of food did you eat? How are you feeling? He says every single human, it's natural to talk something about guf, about worldly things. We're not malachim, we're not angels. So because automatically we talk about worldly things, and even though we're talking about huge chachamim that Rabbi Shimon grew up with, and obviously when they spoke about worldly things, it was like very, very measured and very not overspoken and very careful how they said it and they needed to say it. Even that, even with the greatest chachamim, even though they spoke so much less about worldly things that's not Torah, even that Rabbi Shimon says, better not to say, it's better to be quiet, it's better not to talk anything when it comes to the guf, when it comes to worldly things. See, even though Rabbi Shimon only heard divrei Torah next to him, he grew up next to Chachamim, but even Chachamim are human beings, so they had to talk about worldly things a little bit that was measured on their level, that we can never fathom of Kedusha and Tara. Even that Rabbi Shimon says, Tov mishtika, it's better for the worldly things not to talk about at all. Says the Chofetz Chaim, from here we learn, a person who wants to be careful, beresen, piv, a person who wants to make sure their mouth is closed, bechol yichalato, as much as he could. What should he do? Itragen mineorav, make it a habit. Get used to from a young age to talk less about worldly things, not even lashon hara and lies. And once you're careful about worldly things, once you train yourself to talk less about things that are not sins, worldly things, dvarim shebaguf, then automatically you're going to reduce the amount of lashon hara, sheker, lies, and everything else. That's what the Chofetz Chaim here says. If you're part of a group and they tell you talk, you're better off than tell you to be quiet. And then he ends off like this. V'tzarich she'ida adam, every human being should know. And I'm reading you his words. Ki hadibur uchaviv mikol chaviv. The power of language, the power of communication, our mouth, uchaviv, is the most lovable, mikol chaviv, out of all the loves, it's the most favorite things. Ki bezeh, because through the mouth, nishlemet lo tzurat adam. That's what designs us into a human being. You are human. You're not an animal. Why? Because we have the power of the mouth to communicate. What makes us human is the fact that we're able to communicate with our mouth. So says the Chofetz Chaim, don't damage the most chaviv thing. Don't damage the favorite thing, the most lovable thing, which is the power of communication. A person who wants to take upon himself to start learning the Sefer every single day, Chofetz Chaim Shmirat Lashon, with no doubt, if you learn it every single day consistently, with no doubt, it's going to help you tremendously to control yourself, not to talk lashon hara and chilut, and be'ezrat Hashem, it will bring the geula.
You've just experienced another